Hello everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to join in the celebrations for the 50th anniversary of the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Samantha Strindberg and I support the work of the Marine Mammal Commission as a member of the Committee of Scientific Advisors on Marine Mammals, and I'm also a conservation scientist and wildlife statistician in the Global Conservation Program of the Wildlife Conservation Society. A focus of my work, both with the Marine Mammal Commission and the Wildlife Conservation Society, are wildlife population assessments and the design of surveys and monitoring programs. The interesting challenge with this work is to figure out how best to apply the specialized assessment methods and survey techniques that are continually evolving. And I also enjoy getting wrapped up in the statistical analyses of the resulting survey data. Often this allows me to investigate ecological and human influence factors driving changes in a population over space and time. These analysis results can then be used to inform conservation management, including changes in legislation or other appropriate actions. I am in the fortunate position to be able to support the important conservation work of my many talented colleagues, and I'd like to take you on a brief meander through just a sample of WCS's marine mammal conservation work to highlight the importance of the MMPA to us. Let's set the scene with a bit of history. The Wildlife Conservation Society works to conserve a huge variety of different species in over 70 countries around the world, and has a particularly long history of marine mammal research and conservation. When the New York Zoological Society, now known as WCS, was first established in 1896, William Hornaday served as the first director of the Bronx Zoo. He was instrumental in saving the American bison from extinction, but also played a central part in the North Pacific Fur Seal Treaty of 1911, which was perhaps a model for legislation such as the MMPA of 1972. Another notable person in the history of WCS was Charles Townsend, who was the first director of the New York Aquarium for the New York Zoological Society from 1902 till 1937. Before joining the organization, he took part in extensive scientific expeditions for the United States Fish Commission, recording marine mammals and other wildlife. Townsend was particularly vocal about the protection of fur seals, and the Guadeloupe Island fur seal was later named in his honor. Having visited the Galapagos Islands, he had an interest in tortoise populations, which led to an interest in whale populations. In 1931, he began collecting 19th and early 20th century whaling records that he used to create maps like this one for bowhead and humpback whales. These maps provided important insights into the distribution of whale populations. In the 1960s, New York Zoological Society conservationists Roger and Katie Payne studied humpback whale vocalizations and behavior, and together with Scott McVeigh analyzed humpback whale acoustic recordings. They and others realized that the recordings themselves had the potential for public appeal and could be used to teach people about whales and the conservation crisis caused by commercial whaling. So the record Songs of the Humpback Whale was released before the scientific publication on their research, in fact. The rest, as they say, is history. This was one element in increasing public awareness and concern for great whales and other marine mammals, leading to U.S. Congress passing the Marine Mammal Protection Act in 1972. With decades of work on southern hemisphere humpback whales in the Gulf of Guinea, Madagascar, and the Western Indian Ocean, as well as the Arabian Sea, using both DNA and photo-based capture-recapture techniques for population assessments and to delineate population differences for these animals, WCS led the International Whaling Commission's comprehensive assessment showing recovery after considerable historical and commercial whaling of these breeding stocks off both sides of Africa, We are still working in these regions to ensure continued recovery and to establish the needed protection for these whales and other marine mammals. WCS has also used genetic analyses to delineate population differences of blue whales and right whales, with similar population assessment and genetic analyses also being done for dolphins, showing, for example, a distinct population of humpback dolphins in coastal Bangladesh. The 50th anniversary of the Marine Mammal Protection Act is significant for me and my many colleagues who've been conserving marine mammals both prior to and under the framework established by the MMPA. WCS has worked across a range of species from large whales to oceanic, coastal and freshwater dolphins, pinnipeds and sirenia around the world for decades, and we've been engaged in addressing the most prominent threats that the MMPA covers, namely ocean noise, ship strikes, bycatch and fisheries interactions, habitat degradation and climate change. The MMPA has really been a landmark piece of legislation that has for 50 years acted as a catalyst not only for marine mammal conservation in US waters, where WCS has focused on acoustic and boat-based monitoring of several species of whales and dolphins in the New York Bight, for example, with a multi-partner collaboration that provides near real-time acoustic detections of critically endangered North Atlantic right whales to trigger vessel slowdown with attention paid to both vessel speeds and routing. But we also work in US waters across national borders in the Arctic Beringia region. The MMPA's great impact has been due not only to the regulations in the Act, but also due to its role in elevating marine mammals to an international conservation priority, which has been and continues to be extremely important to WCS. In Arctic Beringia, where we have been involved in acoustic monitoring as well, we are working in partnership with local communities in the Bering Strait, Kotzebue Sound, and the Inuvialuit settlement region of northwest Canada on marine mammal conservation and food security. In Patagonia, where we have a particular focus on southern right whale health and drivers of mortality, we are part of a multi-institutional collaboration tracking these whales by means of satellite tagging. In the Gulf of Guinea, as I touched on before, WCS has a long history of boat-based and aerial population assessments and satellite tracking. With analyses we did on acoustic data collected in the coastal waters of northern Angola, showing how seismic surveys negatively affect humpback whale singing activity. And an important development in the region for marine mammals and other species has been the creation of a huge marine protected area network in Gabon with technical assistance from WCS. It covers 24% of Gabon's exclusive economic zone and includes the delineation of different types of community and commercial fishing zones. As I highlighted before, in the Western Indian Ocean, especially in Madagascar, WCS has for decades been active in assessments of population abundance and interchange with the Southwestern Indian Ocean, as well as satellite tagging activities. More recently, there have been rapid assessments to provide baselines for whale and dolphins in need of conservation attention and information on the threats they face along the entire coast of Tanzania, with additional cetacean conservation work occurring in Kenya. The Bay of Bengal is another focal region for WCS's marine mammal conservation work. Through collaborations with my many WCS marine mammal colleagues, the MMPA has supported our conservation efforts in many different ways. For example, in 2004, the Marine Mammal Commission that was established through the MMPA supported a landmark study led by WCS on the effects of declining freshwater supplies and sea level rise on Ganges River dolphins and Irrawaddy dolphins in the Sundarbans of Bangladesh. During the study, we were able to highlight the sensitivity of these globally endangered species to environmental change and contributed to the establishment of 3 wildlife sanctuaries for freshwater dolphins in the Sundarbans mangrove forest. Follow-up accomplishments included the establishment of all 3 of Bangladesh's marine protected areas, based in part on the occurrence of marine mammals, covering almost 6% of the country's exclusive economic zone. In 2015, the Marine Mammal Commission also provided emergency funds to conduct a rapid assessment of the impacts of a major oil spill on freshwater dolphins in the Sundarbans. And here is another example where the Marine Mammal Commission supported a pilot study of alternative gears and fishing strategies to reduce Atlantic humpback dolphin bycatch in the Republic of Congo, where we've also looked at population distribution and numbers. WCS has supported the Marine Mammal Protection Act by furthering its policy to prevent marine mammal species and population stocks from diminishing as a result of human activities beyond the point at which they cease to be significant functioning elements of the ecosystems of which they are a part. WCS's marine mammal work has addressed marine mammal species and populations of priority Marine Mammal Commission concern, including freshwater dolphins, as well as priority topics such as ocean noise, ship strikes, bycatch and fisheries interactions, habitat degradation and climate change. My colleagues in Arctic Beringia have been focused on Section 119 of the Marine Mammal Protection Act in particular, which supports co-management agreements with Alaska Native organizations such as the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission or Eskimo Walrus Commission, frequently providing a bridge between federal agencies and indigenous hunters. Key lessons we have learned from the past 50 years of marine mammal science and conservation, reinforced by the longevity and ongoing relevance of the MMPA, include that long-term efforts are required to build local capacity and support for protecting marine mammal species and populations, and that targeted multi-partner initiatives can be instrumental in effective long-term conservation success. It has become ever more evident that bycatch is a consequential threat to many species and populations and must be urgently addressed to reduce extinction risks, and that stakeholder engagement, including local fishing communities, must be a key priority for successful marine mammal conservation. If one were to make recommendations for future priorities under the Marine Mammal Protection Act for the next 50 years and beyond, then one priority would be to help countries with habitat supporting the most endangered marine mammals to avoid or reduce habitat degradation, losses from ship strikes, impacts from ocean noise, and to reduce critical threats such as bycatch and fisheries interactions, following standards comparable to the US in accordance with fish import provisions of the MMPA. Another priority is to build the requisite constituencies and stakeholder alliances to manage these critical threats to marine mammals. Across the span of half a century, the Marine Mammal Protection Act has had wide-ranging positive impacts on marine mammal species and populations across the globe. May this inspirational legislation continue to provide the same solid foundation for the conservation of marine mammals long into the future. Hip hip hooray, MMPA. Thank you very much.